After Arizona's big victory against Utah, can we recalibrate where everything stands in the Big 12 races?
You are Locked On Wildcats, your daily podcast on the Arizona Wildcats. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for keeping it Locked On Wildcats. I'm your host, Mike Luke. This show is brought to you by Game Time. Again, if you need to get tickets at the last second, wherever you need to get them, go to Game Time. Download the Game Time app. Use code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. All right, now, Arizona after that Utah game, where exactly are we in the grand scheme of things? I'm at the point now when it comes to Arizona that I believe that, listen, the Texas Tech game is obviously going to be huge, and we're going to talk about that here in a second. But Arizona, at this stage, I believe is you got to say that they can beat any team on the schedule. And I think a lot of that obviously is a big kudos to Brent Brennan and what he was able to do by changing up the coaching staff. Again, that couldn't have been an easy decision for him to make. And he did it. And you've just got to give him all the credit in the world for what he did there, because again, a lot of coaches I just don't think would have been able to do that. But everything's changed after that game, because again, Utah, and again, I know they weren't. I know they were without Cam Rising. But I do think that you could tell that Arizona would have given them a lot of problems with or without Cam Rising, because let's talk about on the offensive side. Arizona's defensive line held up incredibly well against Utah, and I think that's something that I don't know that I did see, and I don't think that. Anybody else really saw either. I do think that with this defensive line, you also know at this stage in the game that they're not going to get pushed around. Not only are they not going to get pushed around, I think that they're going to be this is going to be a unit that I think this is a unit now that is going to be really darn good. And I think that's what's exciting about that, is that they are going to be really darn good. And Trey Smith played really, really well. We needed Trey Smith to become kind of that. That pass rusher that I think everybody was hoping, and he certainly showed that. Not only did he certainly show that, he also showed that he could be he could be somebody that's around the quarterback. And I think a lot of people were hoping that he was going to showcase being a possible NFL prospect at some point. And you saw a lot of that. Again, you need to see more, obviously, but you did see, I think you saw what so many people were excited about with him and what they thought that he could really bring to this Arizona football team. So I think that part is exciting. With the squad, the other thing too that you also got to look at is, where are you then with is there any team out there that should be able to push you around? And I say no, because if Utah couldn't push you around, really no team should push you around. That's where, again, I'm going to keep coming back to that. That's where I'm kind of at with this team. They showed that they could really hold their own. And again, a big part of this was Isaiah Johnson. Isaiah Johnson, in my opinion, is the best defensive lineman, or at least the best interior defensive lineman on this team. He is an absolute monster. Not only is he a monster, he's a guy that you watch him, and I think he's got NFL potential. I really do. The big thing with him was always being able to stay healthy. If he can stay healthy, then Arizona's in some really good shape. But I think that's the big part of it, is being able to stay healthy, because he's active. He's super strong. Not only is he super strong, he's the dude that he can move in a way that Chuba can't. Now, again, I don't want to beat up Chuba, because Chuba's a great dude and Chuba does some really good things. But I do think that we're also kind of at the point now that he's more of a space eater than really a different, really a difference maker. And that's kind of where I'm at. So watching that, that. Now, Stanley Taufo from USC, obviously, he was huge. He was massive. He did so many different things for Arizona in that game. Tackles for loss, a sack. And again, when you get an older person in there, it is something that you can't really put you can't really minimize. He has grown man strength to him, and that is that's something that not a lot of dudes have. I think we were talking about a Bear Anderson before the season. Where exactly was he going to stand in the grand scheme of things? Well, you know what? He got hurt. He was also a little bit undersized, so I don't know that was ever going to be a huge part of what Arizona wanted to do this season. But maybe I don't know what to say. I don't know really what to say other than the fact that defensive line changed everything for me. It looked a lot like last year's. Team, where you're like, okay, there is a absolute possibility for you to be able to make a big difference. And that's what you saw against Utah. Keep in mind, Utah had like 84 yards on the ground. If I told you guys before the game that Utah was going to have 84 yards on the ground, you were probably thinking, what, on one play? I mean, that's kind of where we're at with this. And Arizona obviously changed the calculation entirely with that. So again, the line is big. Kevon Darton got in there a little bit more as well. So we'll see what happens. Chase Kennedy as well. Arizona playing some chess, not checkers, dropping him into coverage as well, which I thought was super fascinating because that threw off Utah in a big way. I don't think that they thought there was any way that there was going to be the case. And then it made things a lot easier for Jacob Manu and for Tay Brown, because when you don't have somebody that's basically just hanging all over you, all of a sudden things become a lot easier for you. And as good as Jacob Manu is, and he's absolutely fantastic, he's not the kind of dude, and we talked about that, it's like a LeVar Arrington or a player that, it doesn't really matter who's in front of you. It just matters where he is. He's got to have some people that can make his life easier, and Arizona's line did exactly that. So a big, big tip of the cap to everything that occurred there. Now, with this squad, I also think as well that that secondary, that was fantastic. That was one of the best secondary performances of the entire season. And not only that, you knew that it didn't feel fluky. And I think that's something that was very exciting about all of this, is that it didn't feel fluky. It felt like this was kind of what you're expecting, what you're at, and you're like, okay, we should be able to get more of that. Emmanuel Carnley, you've got to give a ton of credit to, because again, he was exquisite. He was everywhere. He has a very bright future. He's big, he's strong, he's physical, and you can also tell too that football means a lot to him. You factor in Genesis Smith as well. Genesis Smith's going to play in the NFL. Barring injury, Genesis Smith is 1,000% going to play in the NFL. And again, at Arizona, it's not like you always have an abundance of NFL players. So that's something that you can't really take lightly, is if you have someone that's going to play in the NFL. And that's exactly what Genesis Smith is going to be doing. So there's obviously that. Now, watching this, the rest of the secondary, Traden Stukes might be out for a while. Marquise Groves-Killebrew should be good to go. I love MJK. He's a player that I think is he's good, and he's going to be ready to go. Not only that, he is a player that he's going to be big time. He's going to be somebody that's going to be opposite Emmanuel Carnley next year, and he's just around the football. And I think that's what's exciting about it. He is around the football. And I think what's also exciting is that as well that he's instinctive, he's big, he's strong, he's fast. Getting him back is going to be big, and this is going to be a group effort because, again, I expect Traden Stukes might be out for a while. And if Traden Stukes is out for a while, then is that Arizona is at least in good hands with with this team, and especially in the secondary. So there is that. Now we need to get to the offensive line here in a second, because that was a huge part of what Arizona was able to do. But first, game time. Now, Arizona's got a game this week against Texas Tech. And I think with this squad, you know that tickets are going to be hard to come by. Download the Game Time app. Again, use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off your first purchase. And again, when it comes to Game Time, it's easy, it's fast, it's reliable. Again, use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download the Game Time app today. With this though, it's just great. Again, a lot of people use it, getting into bowl games, getting into football games, all kinds of stuff. So again, Arizona, Texas Tech, that thing's going to be filling up sooner than later. So get in there, download the Game Time app, use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats and making this your first listen of the day. I am your host, Mike Luke. All right, now let's talk about the offense here a little bit. All right, now the offensive line, I think the offensive line, you got to give a lot of credit to all of these guys. And a big part of the offensive line and everything that they could do was getting Alexander Deuced in there, the Deuced boost. Deuced was massive. Deuced was huge. Deuced was not only great. Deuced was the dude that you watched and you're like, okay, Arizona can do some things with him. I think you've got three guards that, when they're healthy, are clearly better than the rest of them, and that is Deuced. That's obviously Wendell Moy, and besides that, you've also got Leif. Leif is obviously dealing with some things, but for people that. That's nothing. Leif and the coaching staff are in a great spot with each other. There's just some things, and that'll be out there sooner than later. But those are the three guys. Ryan Stewart tries really hard. He's good to have as kind of a swing guard, but he's not somebody that you're going to win a lot of football games with if you're starting. So that's something obviously to keep in mind as well. Getting Deuced in there was big. So now I think you got your offensive line. You got Big Rhino. You got Jonas Savanea. You got Wendell Moy. You got Josh Baker. And now you got Alexander Deuced. That's the line going forward. I think if you're Arizona, you're certainly hoping that they could everybody can stay. Everybody can basically be in the same page. And, that's something that Arizona didn't have. You had a lot of different lines, and you had some guys out there that shouldn't. All five of those dudes are good. All five of those guys belong out there. So, again, that makes things easier for the running game. That makes things easier for the passing game as well. I think the next step for Arizona then is to be able to get that passing game going. We're going to be talking about that. But you at least saw it. With a guy like Kean Burnett, you saw what he was about. You saw that he was you saw that not only was this what Kean Burnett was about, you saw that, when you got a new coaching staff in there, that they could also kind of understand that, all right, we got to be able to get this young man involved, and Arizona did exactly that. So I think that is a great thing with that Arizona was able to do. Very excited about where everything is in the grand scheme of things with this, with things moving forward. Again, I like Matt Adkins a great deal. Matt Adkins, I think, was the right man at the right time, and right man at the right time, and that's where I think Arizona's at. So what does this mean then going forward? I think it's pretty much game on for anybody. I really do. I think with this team, with this team, listen, if you push Utah around, you should be able to win about any game you're going against, because Utah is that team that you're like, okay, we did that. We can do that against anybody, because Utah doesn't get pushed around. Also, the thing is, too, people keep talking about 23 points. Utah doesn't give up a lot of points. So, again, it's not like you were going to drop 55 points on Utah. You had more than enough points. And, again, the coach Arizona did more than enough offensively, I think, to be able to make that one work. So there is that. Also, with Utah, I think the other thing as well is that, things are never going to be easy. But Arizona, not only did you score those points, you also, I think it felt like you left a few points on the field as well. And that's where if you're Arizona, you got to feel that, man, we got a little bit more, but it feels like you also left some things there, which in a weird way is kind of a good thing, because again, I think that Arizona is at kind of the stage in the game where you do know that Arizona is they did what they had to do in that game. So again, against Texas Tech, now it gets interesting, because Texas Tech, when they're going offensively, they're about as talented an offense as there is in the entire conference. They are a little bit hit or miss. They're very much Jekyll and Hyde, but this is the game. Arizona has to be able to win this game. Arizona against Texas Tech, you've got to be able to you're going to have to score a lot of points, because there's no reason that Texas Tech can't. There's no reason that Texas Tech. There's no reason that Texas Tech, you should not be able to score a ton of points against Texas Tech, because defensively they're not very good. Arizona should be able to score in the high 30s. That's where I'm at with that. It's pretty much point blank. Arizona should be able to score in the high 30s because they don't have a good pass rush. And not only do they have a good pass rush, they also don't have this also not a thing where, defensively they can do a ton. Now, ASU, I think ASU was basically kind of snake bitten because they had a quarterback who wasn't able to really get all the guys the ball. I don't see that being the case, but with the defense for Arizona, I think you got to keep this game in the mid to high 20s. If you do that, then I think Arizona's got a great chance of being able to win this game. And not only made the right chance, a chance where if you win this game, then you got Colorado, you got some other games as well, but you start looking at it and you're like, man, we can run off some wins here. And I think that's what's exciting about all of this. But again, it's one thing at a time. I expect this to be close to a sellout. Not only do I expect this, I think Arizona's going to sell this game out, and I think Arizona's going to win this game. And that point, I think that it's pretty much game on with anybody. Now, you look around the rest of the conference then, Colorado. Now, again, I don't like Colorado. I don't like Deion Sanders, but I got to give them credit. They're 2-0. I did not see them doing what they did to UCF. They look terrible against Baylor. This is going to be an interesting game against Kansas State. Because Kansas State is going to run the ball right at them. I think that Kansas State's going to win that game, though. Arizona, I could see getting Kansas State again. Kansas State, though, is also a drastically different team on the road. Oklahoma State, I don't necessarily worry about Oklahoma State. I've been saying this for a while. I think with Oklahoma State, they've got a lot of, obviously you got the running game. Ollie Gordon hasn't gotten off this year, I think, the way that people thought. But I do not worry about Bowman. I just don't. I think he's kind of the epitome of kind of meh. And then watching UCF, you're kind of like, if you're a UCF fan, that was very, very disappointing. And I think that with UCF, KJ Jefferson's not that good. I thought KJ Jefferson was probably a little bit better than he was. He's not that good. I think that Arizona can definitely win that game. I know that it's a difficult spot. I get all of that, but at the same time, I think that Arizona can win that game. You look at some of these other teams out there. Kansas has kind of fallen by the wayside. Kansas looks terrible. They play ASU this week. Hopefully they beat ASU. But Kansas, and I'm asking this, who do you look at and you're like, man, Arizona can't beat them? We're going to get to some teams that here in a second that I think you're like, maybe be a little bit better. But BYU looks good. And honestly, I should have seen BYU. BYU generally isn't a program that is ever going to have multiple bad seasons in a row. You generally just don't see that from BYU. They had a terrible season last year. I think that people were kind of overlooking them this year, and they're solid. They're solid. I mean, they beat a variety of different teams in a variety of different ways. They're going to win a lot of games this year. And I think we're kind of at the stage now that, with BYU, that's a game in a couple weeks that Arizona is going to have to take very, very seriously. And then there's some other games that you should absolutely be able to win. You've got Houston. Arizona should absolutely beat the snot out of Houston. They stink. Then you got Colorado then in a couple weeks as well. That's going to be an interesting one on October 19th. They come in here and they pose some real issues. Listen, with Colorado, you probably have the best wide receiving core in the entire country, and if it's not the best, it's right there. I mean, everybody knows about Travis Hunter. Not only do you know about Travis Hunter, you also know that you got a LeJohntay Webster, you got a Will Shepherd, you got dudes, and you got a quarterback that can get them the ball. And I think that's where where Colorado is very difficult, because Shedeur is really, really good. Not only is Shedeur really good, that's somebody that I think we're going to talk about here a little bit more in just a second. But first, FanDuel. Check it out, FanDuel. All right, here's the deal. Visit FanDuel.com to look at all kinds of odds. Here's the deal. NFL fans, you can start with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. NFL's here, college football's here, all kinds of good stuff. And not only that, I think with FanDuel, too, again, money's good. But again, Arizona, Texas Tech, that line's at 6. Hop in there. And again, you can bet on games you can bet in game, you can bet before a game, you can bet during a smorgasbord of different opportunities with FanDuel. That's what's exciting about FanDuel. Again, check it out, FanDuel.com. Again, you can bet during games, you can bet before, and you can bet futures. Hop in there, do what so many others are doing. Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats and making this your first listen of the day. I am your host, Mike Luke. Okay, now let's talk about Colorado. They're interesting, but again, Colorado's also looked terrible for a good percentage of this season as well. So I am not giving in on Colorado. We're going to know a lot more, I think, after Kansas State. But this, like I said, this is also a team that basically was kind of pushed around by Baylor. Dave Aranda basically gave them the game. Nebraska, they looked like they could play Nebraska 100 times and never beat Nebraska. So there's that. There was just not a lot to be impressed by. But again, I got to give them credit on that game against UCF. They looked really, really good. So there's certainly that. Iowa State looks good. I mean, I got to give Iowa State credit. I mean, you got, like I said, we talked about, with some, you got a freshman quarterback or a sophomore quarterback that was one of the best in the country last year. They've continued to grow on that. They're ranked 16. I don't know that I saw that one, and I don't know that really anybody saw that one coming. I mean, I think they saw him being good. I didn't see him being, where they are, but we'll see where they end up at the end. They're good. ASU's better than I think people thought, but I still don't worry about them, mainly because I don't really look at their passing game, and I'm like, man, that's something that Arizona's got to be worried about. You got a really good running attack. But I guess, when you look around the conference, K-State obviously handed it to Arizona, but Arizona could get them again, and Kansas State has proven to be a different team on the road. Avery Johnson is he can really run. He showed this last game. He showed some improved passing chops, but again, it's a new. It could be a new team that Arizona rolls out there. So we will see. But you got to feel pretty good about where you're at if you're Arizona, because all these games now are winnable, and that's what we've been talking about. And that was the importance this entire offseason, was being able to know that, all right, we got to win these games. We got to go game by game by game by game, and we've got to stack these wins. And so far, Arizona, listen, they're 3-1. If I were to tell you before the season you're going to be 3-1 and that you were that one win was going to be pulverizing Utah in Rice-Eccles, I think everybody would have taken that. So we got to sit here and say that we're above it, even though Arizona did not look good at all those first 3 games of the season. Arizona, though, is kind of at that next stage with everything. So we will see that. Now, coming up tomorrow, we are going to talk about the Arizona offense, because I think with the Arizona offense, that this is going to be a spot where they've got to continue to just improve. They got to continue to be a team that can be a top 15 unit. We talked about that pretty much all season. And we've got to look, and you got to be like, all right, Arizona's got to be able to be a top 15 unit. They showed steps in the right direction, certainly, but there's still that next step that they've got to be able to take. And I think that's where you're at if you're an Arizona fan, is that, yes, you showed a lot of improvements, but you got to be able to continue to get better. And I think that's where, if Arizona can do that, you feel in good shape. You got to get T-Mac going. I know some people are concerned about the body language. I'm not necessarily concerned about that. Wide receivers want to score touchdowns. He hasn't had a touchdown in a few games. I get all of that. But Kean Burnett broke out in a big way. I think the offensive line is being closer to solidified, so you got to give him a lot of credit with that. So there is that. And but then it's kind of, like I said, then it's kind of game on at that point. So we will find out. Arizona's, though, their offense, I think the defense is going to be fine under Dwayne Aquina. I got all the faith in the world in him. But again, the offense is the one that's got the talented players, the really talented players, the ones that can be difference makers. Some of the All-American types. They got to be able to take advantage of that. And if you take advantage of that, then I think that you're going to be in pretty good shape. All right, now coming up also in the week, we're going to talk red-blue. We're going to break down the red-blue game on Friday. A lot of interesting little tidbits there. Arizona basketball season is here, my friends. So there's a lot to look forward to as well with that. But again, good time to be an Arizona fan, but you got to get that win against Texas Tech. You got to be. It's first things first, and then you move on from there. But so again, we'll be back with you tomorrow, breaking down the Arizona offense, and the following day, talking about the red-blue game. But on that note, very much appreciate you all making Locked On Wildcats your first listen of the day. I am your host, Mike Luke.